Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Resident Evil Director's Cut. This video is going to be a bit different than other episodes in this series, and hopefully it doesn't become a running issue. I did have audio for the first 4 minutes of this video, but I'm deciding to just post-record the entire video. And I can explain how it happened and what I'm kind of doing to mitigate to make sure it doesn't happen again. So my setup's a little just thrown together, for lack of a better term. And so my mic cable runs all the way across my desk, and then I was playing with my controller over it. And then at a part we get to later in the episode, I actually end up pulling the mic cable out. And I did catch it. I did realize that it needed to go back in, but apparently the audio program I use does not like when you disconnect mic stuff in the middle of a recording, because it didn't record audio for the entire rest of the video. So instead, I was going to use this as an opportunity to talk kind of big picture. So we have our first boss appearing on screen right now. It's Snake Boss, and this boss fight actually ended up going a bit differently than it could have. So the guy we met in the last episode, and I probably should have looked up his name, but when we were going to save him, apparently we did not go fast enough. And when I died, I tried going as fast as possible, and we still didn't. What's supposed to happen is if you save him fast enough, he actually barges into this fight and uses his assault shotgun to take down the boss. So that would have been nice, because then he would drop the shotgun and we would get it and we'd have a better shotgun. But we didn't get to see that. And this was also about the point that I pulled out my mic cable. And then I put it back in about 4 minutes into the video, but it didn't work. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the series as a whole and some of the other overarching things, because I thought this would be a good opportunity. And I allude to some of this stuff later on, but now is a good opportunity for me to focus in on my exact train of thought. So I've called it out a couple of times. I tried to call it out almost at the beginning of every single episode. But we are playing Resident Evil 1 Director's Cut, which was a remake version that released just roughly around a year after the first game actually released. Oh, I didn't notice that we were poisoned right there. That's interesting. Oh, I didn't notice later, because things change. But there are a couple of differences between this version and the original. So first of all, when the original was released in Japan, it had a feature that was auto-aim, and it helped you lock on to... And there, we died from poison.
Am I poisoned? Give me the serum.
Okay, I think that's all the commentary. Yeah, okay. So one of those features is auto-aim. And while it was released in Japan with this, in the United States, it was not released with auto-aim. And that was because they wanted to make the game harder, a bit more than that arcade style. Well, they added in this feature, this auto-aim feature, into the Director's Cut version, which is one of the big changes. And so, while doing some research for the first 6 episodes...
Barry?
you find out that, or I found out, that you could just press L1 and it will lock you onto the enemy. And I use this a lot later, and now the game's running a bit more smoothly, to be honest. Some of the other changes that we get to see, or that we might get to see. Right now, I'm thinking we won't, just because of time and wanting to move on to some other series in a more timely fashion. Is this game does add what's called advanced mode or arranged mode. And all that does is it takes all these items that we're finding around the mansion and outside of it and scatters them around to new locations, as well as changing a little bit of the zombie layout and things of that nature to give it a new feel on the game. I will also say one difference between the GameCube version, which was another remake of this game, and this version is it adds a little bit more story. A couple new missions, if you will, are added in. But on top of that, excuse me, my lunch isn't quite agreeing with me. Just trying to reference my notes. It does add mechanics like quick weapons, so you can hit the D-pad and quickly flip between weapons, which would be very, very nice. And then also it adds zombies reviving. So I've been relying a lot, especially in this early part of the game, about things staying dead. And that wouldn't be the case in the GameCube version. So in some ways it's easier, it's nicer, a lot of quality of life updates, but in other ways it does make the game a little bit harder. The only other thing that I have of note that changes between this version, the original, and the GameCube version is some of the music slightly changes. And so I'm not quite sure which tracks are different. But for those of you who are a big fan of this series and a big fan of this game, and when I say series I mean Resident Evil, big fan of this game, you'll know the differences. And so I think it's cool that they released that. Now, they did release the director's cut as a way of filling in some time, if you will. Resident Evil 2 was supposed to release quickly after Resident Evil 1, but it had to be delayed due to some other issues that I'm not aware of, and so they pushed this out instead, and that's how we got this version of the game. Trying to think if there was anything else I really wanted to cover, like high level, because I could have come into this a bit more prepared, but I've been pushing off recording this episode because of the having to post-record all the audio. It's not my favorite thing to do, especially in a series like this. It's kind of disappointing because a lot of this is my reactions and seeing how I deal with things. And you're not going to get to see my live reactions almost at all. You'll get to see in the gameplay and if I really mess up or anything. But in terms of my like, oh no, or I really got scared by that or anything like that, it's not there. But at least something changed. Sorry, I got a little bit distracted. I've got my TV on because it's college football is on, and I've been missing college football for so much time. I'm a big football fan. I've thought about bringing it to the channel, but there's just some difficulties that I gotta work through. But don't be surprised if that comes in the future. But we're into some of the deeper parts of the mansion, and honestly, I don't remember too many of these rooms because there isn't a ton that we pick up from what I remember. Now, we do stockpile a lot of ammunition and a lot of backup stuff that we will use later. But it is really interesting for me, having gone through, and as of this point, I've recorded through episode 12. And I don't want to spoil how far we are there. But I've made really some leaps and bounds between where we were or where we are now and where we get there. So it's really interesting thing for me to see my progression. But I'm really enjoying this game, and I honestly didn't think I would like it as much as I do. Because it's fun. I can see why a lot of people love this series and swear by it, and it really makes you think. A lot of the puzzles aren't very overly complicated, but they're enough to just be like, hey, you need to kind of think out what you're doing. I'll be interested to play through this game as Chris, because I can talk about some of the differences I've seen, and I haven't started playing the game as Chris. Jeez, that dog was giving me hell. But some of the differences between Chris is some of the weapons are not as readily available. Also, it takes you a lot longer to find a weapon. You have to start using the knife, which will be a lot more difficult for me. But maybe it'll be easier now that I have knowledge that the auto aim works. And you can see me here totally being a coward and deciding that because it was outside and there was already a dog on screen that I wasn't ready for it. But other things that change with Chris is obviously we don't have Barry as our support. We have someone else. I won't spoil it. But we get to do... It's mostly the same kind of playthrough, just a little harder. So now, in terms of this series, I think I am going to play through Chris and his storyline, but I think I might wait a bit and come back to this game. Just so that way I can get some other games in and I can experience them, as well as it gives me a bit of a break. At the beginning of this series, I think I alluded to looking up how long to beat and seeing how long it would take to get roughly an idea on maybe episodes. And it's taking a bit longer than I was expecting, but I did look and see that from this point, we're not that far off from being 100% or on the 100% run, which was actually really rewarding for me, just to see that I've solved all of these puzzles. But I know Resident Evil isn't known for having the most complicated puzzles, but you can start to see that we are starting to stockpile some ammunition, and that's really nice and really helpful, and we're starting to get there in terms of starting to show a little bit of capabilities in this game. Now you can see I'm kind of messing around with the box and trying to orient myself well. I think at this point I notice, if I'm just kind of going through, I don't have any way to heal myself, which is very concerning, especially how this game has gone. So because of that, I think right now we're making a push, if I remember correctly, to go try to pick up some health as a backup, because it's very important. But you can see how lost I get in the mansions. I don't know why we're going back into the art room. And I hate to spoil it. In the next episode, you're going to do a lot of this too. So I'm sorry for this week of content where it's a lot of me fumbling about in the mansion. But in the next couple of episodes, we do start to make a lot of progress. And so I'm really happy with us starting to get a lot more competent and capable in this game. But we still got a bit of ways to go. So I haven't spoiled too much for myself, which has been really nice. But there isn't that much to spoil in this game if you've seen a Resident Evil before. From what I've noticed, the story's kind of backloaded. So while we're not seeing a lot now, we're going to start seeing more and more as we get further into the game. And I love those old school animations. It's one of those, I knew that door opening was a scene, but you don't realize where it came from if you've never seen the actual game. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to remember this part of the game because I don't recall going through it. So that can either be a good thing or a bad thing. I remember being convinced that there was something to do with this fish tank. As always, and I say this almost every time text comes up, I read through this at my speed, and I don't like to read it out loud. So, if you need more time, pause the video, and you can easily pull it up and look it through. I don't feel like I have the same vocal capabilities to give those books or pamphlets an interesting engagement for it. Okay, I remembered something about that fish tank. But, yeah, this part of the mansion, and I haven't played through later parts. If you've played this game before, you kind of know where I'm going. I'm curious if these rooms have more purpose than my initial running through them, or if they're restock rooms. But we are starting to get to that point where I'm kind of curious about whether because I said we're on that 100% path up to the point of leaving the mansion, which is at the end of this episode, and we're kind of hitting the last bits of things here. At the end of this episode, we're ready to leave the mansion. And so, up to leaving the mansion, we haven't missed very much at all. The only thing really of note that we have missed is not getting the assault shotgun, which is disappointing because it would be a nice weapon to have, but we are still doing well. But there's not much left to this episode. I'd be curious to to read or see what y'all think about how this series is going and how I'm handling it. I don't have to worry about spoilers from you guys too much because of how far in advance I record these. But I would be curious to see if you have any tips or anything like that for when we go through this game as Chris. Because I'll likely be going through another game, so by the time you leave those tips for me, I can actually apply them to that run. And I don't know if we're going to kind of stream that and do that a little bit informal, because I am looking at live streaming, or if we're just going to go through like this, and it'll probably go a lot faster because I know much more about this game. I won't say that it's competent, but I know more. But yeah, in the next episode, I've already said it, we'll head outside of the mansion. This was the last of this recording session, and so I am going to apologize that I'm going to repeat some of this information in the next episode. I actually recorded all that session last night, and then I'm just going through and trying to clean up things that I've missed in terms of editing wise so I can get them out. But I'm trying to remember what's the last couple of things we do. I probably should have watched through a decent amount of this video beforehand. But that would show I fully know what I'm doing. I don't want to give you all that impression. Because me? Know what I'm doing? That's a joke. Obviously I wished I saved the audio so I wouldn't have to be recording this now, but I'd love to know what I was trying to do. Because we're going back to, am I picking up these, I think I'm just picking up these herbs. Because that way we have health. Because I have a decent idea of where we ended. Oh, his name's Richard. Yeah, you can actually save him if you're fast enough. But I think I'm just rounding up and trying to pick up health before we head outside, because I expect that there's a big thing outside that we have to go take care of, because usually in horror games when you head outside of your safety place, usually very bad things happen. I think I just noticed this door. Oh no, now I know what I'm doing, because when we went here before it said it was too dark to read. And I thought I could use the lighter as a light source, but it doesn't let us use that there. And that's what I'm doing. Okay, so I had a couple of theories on where I could use the lighter, and that's what we're doing is the last couple of things in this episode. So now I believe we're heading to the west side of the upstairs, if I remember correctly. Because there was a area there that looked like we could use the lighter. So we're just heading that way and seeing if there's anything else along the way while I'm trying to remember where the area I'm trying to go is. And that's a big thing about this this game is just knowledge of your inventory, knowledge on how to handle it, and knowledge on where you're going and what's the best way through there. I'd like to think I've gotten a lot better on picking my battles in a little more better way, and that seemed to help us out a fair amount. And this is where I thought another good spot to use the lighter would be. And that's where we're supposed to put it. And this gives us the second story map. Now that we've explored the entire second story, other than a couple of rooms that we've been locked out on, now we finally have the map. Yeah, and that's just me kind of showing it off. I don't know what the radio is still for. But we did pick it up, so maybe we'll need to use it later. But obviously there's still some rooms in the mansion that we have not explored. As you can see in that top left corner, that'd probably be a good area for us to explore. But looks like my time is done in the episode, so I hope you enjoyed it and see you in the next one.